The female is not going to say no. I knew what happened, but I read her the riot act, and bro, I could tell she was in bad shape.
What's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Chris Featherstone here for yet another episode of Writing with Russo. I'm here, of course, with the man, the myth, the legend, Vince Russo. How are you tonight, my man?
I'm all right, Chris. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. I'm doing good. So we're going to start off this episode of Writing with Russo on a very somber note, unfortunately. Me as a therapist, it hits hard. It hits very, very hard to hear things like this. As of this particular episode, the very popular female women's star back in late 90s, early 2000s with WCW, eventually with the TNA. You worked with her, and of course, we knew her as Daffney. She had a very unfortunate, very sad Instagram video, just really desperate. And then unfortunately, just within less than a day later, we hear reports of her passing. So very, very sobering, very sad. She was talking about how alone she was. And you know, again, me as a therapist hearing that stuff is just like, man, you know, here's what I'm going to say before I pass it over to you. For anyone who is in that particular state, me as a psychology doctor, I feel for you. I deal with people who deal with that type of depression on a daily basis and help them navigate through it. I have a very heightened sense of sympathy and understanding from people like that from a mental standpoint. And if that's you that's dealing with that right now, listen, I don't care how many people you know, how many people you don't know, who your name is, what your reputation is, how much money you got. Listen, it don't matter. If that is a real issue for you, do not hide it. Reach out, call someone, accept any calls, accept any texts. There's people who are going to be reaching out to you. Please, please, please allow yourself to get help. And so that is my humble plea for you, for those who are going through similar depression and things like that. So Vince Russo, you worked with her, and from what I'm friends with Crowbar, and of course she managed Crowbar, and he was very saddened by it as far as what happened. As far as a lot of other people, it's a lot of people in the wrestling business commented on it. Vince, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, Chris, I kind of more than worked with her because she was one of the people that I have still been in touch with. You know, I mean, 22 years. I mean, I met Daffney in 1999, bro.
Yep.
And my last conversation with her, Chris, I want to say was about 6 to 8 years ago. I mean, 6 to 8 months ago.
Gotcha.
Just a few months ago, Chris. And the reason we had that conversation was because her, bro, you know, Chris, listen, I don't want to be the guy always pointing the fingers at wrestling. But I can tell you, you know, when I first met this girl in 1999, I remember it vividly like it was yesterday. I met her on the plane. I met her on the plane ride, like from WCW. We were both in Atlanta. We were going to the town. That's where I met her. Mm-hmm. And bro, you're talking about such a happy-go-lucky, energetic, funny, loving soul. Mm-hmm. And I mean, bro, this was the Daffney that I knew. And, you know, Chris, there was an incident. I mean, I remember the incident like it was yesterday at TNA, and it was a hardcore match. And I remember Abyss was a part of it, and Raven was a part of it. I don't remember exactly who was in it, but, you know, Chris, as a writer, you let the talent do their own match. Mm-hmm. That's their artistry, okay? So I didn't know what they had laid out in the match. And, you know, bro, I remember watching the match, and she had like a horrific spot in the match. And I remember seeing that on the monitor. And as soon as I saw that, I raced over to the curtain where I knew they were going to come out. And I kind of read her the riot act. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing, Daffney? You can't be doing that type of stuff. And I know what happened, Chris. I know she's there with legends like Abyss and Raven, and she's not going to say no.
Yeah.
Like, especially at the female is not going to say no. I knew what happened, but I read her the riot act, and bro, I could tell she was in bad shape. Bro, that led to a lot of psychological, mental problems. Bro, she said in the video, I want my brain to go to Boston. She knew she was dealing with something. And I think that's where it stemmed from. She was part of various lawsuits.
Yeah.
Bro, it was the old thing. TNA didn't want to pay her medical bills. The reason why I'm bringing all that up, bro, was because a lot of the legal technicalities were kind of behind her, and she wanted to do a podcast to share her story. She wanted her story to be known, what happened to her, and how wrestling companies treated it and what she went through physically, mentally, the whole 9 yards. And I told her at that point, I said, listen, I'll do whatever you want. You know how I feel about you. Write it up. Let's see what this show looks like on paper, and then we'll talk. And we never spoke again. But Chris, again, I don't want to point the finger at wrestling, but this hits doubly hard for me because she was very emotional on that last phone call, and she cried a couple of times, and I could tell she was hurt, never to this level. But Chris, it brings me back to Joni. I mean, it brings me back to that, and knowing what these women were going through on an emotional and mental level. Chris, we listen, man, I'll get heat for saying this because, Chris, in 2021, men and women are equal. No, they're not. No, they're not. And I could tell you, Chris, from what I endured in the wrestling business, I couldn't imagine being a female and going through what I went through. And I said this with Joni's death, bro, when it's over, there are some people, and you know this as a psychologist, Chris, there are some people that can deal with it. There are some people that can't. It depends on your makeup and who you are. I never blamed Joni because she couldn't deal with it. And, it looked like, obviously, Daffney was struggling for a very, very long time. And bro, then I sit here and I'm thinking about Ashley Mazzaro.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, like we have to be a little bit more delicate with women in this business. The notion now that they're equal to the men. No, they're not. No, they're not, bro. Men and women are different physically, emotionally, and mentally. And now when I'm looking at Joni and Massaro, and I'm looking at Daffney now, like, whoa, wait a minute, guys. We need to look at this, man.
Yeah.
How many times, bro, we've heard Mickey James talk about the ageism and how women, it's over at a certain age, and guys are going on into their mid-40s.
And being world champions.
There's a lot here when it comes to the women in the business. And, bro, we really need to start paying attention to that, bro.
I agree. 100%. I agree. And you said a very, very operative word there. And you said delicate. You said the word delicate. And I totally agree with that. I'm a big fan of that type of mindset. I think it's very important to really have that mindset when it comes to delicacy. Regardless of whatever's going on in 2021, I'm old school. I'll speak for myself, Vince. All right. So whoever wants to roar out loud, okay, do it. but I'll just speak for myself. All right. I'm old school. I have a beautiful wife who's an alpha who can stand up on her own. But at the same time, I'm the king of the jungle. I'm the alpha. I'm the protector. You know what I mean? Though nobody come in this house, you better not dare coming up in this house because I've got I've got to roar louder than you can hear. All right. And so that's how I feel. And I got a bite that's stronger than my bark. You know what I mean? And so I'm old school like that. I'm protective like that toward my wife, you know what I mean, and people that I love. And when I think of delicate, I think it's important for the men in the pro wrestling business to be protective of the females in the pro wrestling business and really have that type of support because we got to be honest, Vince. They have to go the extra mile just to get a reasonable spot in the pro wrestling business. There's no equality when it comes to that. They get underpaid, they get mistreated. There's a lot of things that's not equal despite this equality thing going on. It's not true in the wrestling business.
Chris, just today I had this conversation with Stevie Ray, and he was talking about the way they handled Sherry. And bro, Sherry could beat you and I up. And he explained, Vince, back then, nobody was bumping Sherry. Nobody was touching Sherry. Like the men back then protected the women. Correct. Because, bro, like, listen, Chris, I don't need to be a psychology major to know if guys are laying out a match and a woman is involved and they want her to do something she feels uncomfortable with, bro, you know how the business is. She's not going to say no. Chris,
no one that's, female have a bleeding spot and the male would get a bleeding spot and get paid ridiculously more than the female, bleeding. And so, yeah, I agree with you, Vince. I mean, just like I said, unfortunately, I see these types of issues every day in my office, and it's difficult to really handle. And again, I mean, I think the one of the biggest takeaways from this is, male wrestlers protect the female wrestlers, stand up for them. If allowed them to have the space to say no for a spot, you know what I mean? And like you said, I mean, just CTE came from that stuff, you know what I mean? And just CTE, I've done papers on CTE, and it's just, I mean, talk about one of the biggest things on CTE is a lot of people have hallucinating thoughts, you know what I mean? It's just CTE. I'm as a psychology doctor, I've done so much research on CTE, and it's no joke. It's no joke at all. I mean, your brain is years and years, older than you a lot of times. You deal with a lot of depression, suicidal thoughts, feelings of emptiness, hallucinating. There's so much things to talk. There's so many things that comes with CTE. So, and you have to think about it. Like when you take those spots, you have to understand what you're risking in the long run.
Yep.
Listen, if you're 20, 30 years old doing all those flips and crap and all those spots and table spots and, ladder spots and all that stuff, it's going to be worth a hill of beans in the long run when you get in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And, the answer is no, it's not worth it. So be bold. Females, stand up, be bold. If you don't want to take a spot, don't take a spot. Men, protect that person, protect that female, allow her that space to say no instead of taking spots and getting in all types of, situations where they shouldn't, and of course our prayers goes with the family of Daffney, friends and family. It's really a tough thing. And like you said, you start off with wrestling, you know what I mean? And it really is sad to see this come from. And unfortunately, there's so many other situations like this within the pro wrestling business, that we see all the time. This isn't uncommon, in the pro wrestling business when it comes to psychological trauma, that has came from it. So it's really difficult to see the stuff like this.